Sam, I got a bone to pick with you when it comes to your thoughts on USC football going into this year, man. You got them only winning 6 games this year. I have them winning nine. And it's been a really rough offseason for Trojans fans because they're entering year one in the Big Ten, and all they keep hearing is USC isn't ready for the physicality of this conference. They aren't tough enough up front. Are you still feeling the same way about USC today as you did when you released those record predictions last week?
I have no read on USC. This includes me doing more research. And with these new teams, I've learned exponentially more, not just from my own research, but from fans correcting my research or offering their input. And I trust them because they've watched their teams longer than I have, because I didn't watch much of USC, Oregon, Washington, UCLA before 2023. I just didn't. So there's a lot to take in, a lot to soak in. The issue that I have with USC isn't Lincoln Riley. It isn't their long term. I actually think that with the current staff that Riley has assembled, as long as they just recruit at that top 15 level, I think dividends will begin to pay off at the latest next year. I think next year will be a year where they're good, but I have no read on what they are right now. None. I mean, they took a Wyoming defensive tackle and Gavin Meyer out of the portal because they whiffed on all their other desired players. Like they couldn't get Simeon Barrow or Derek Harmon, who are much better than Gavin Meyer. And while the staff he assembled on defense is elite, it took Jim Knowles 2 years to assemble an elite defense. His 2022 defense allowed big play after big play to any offense that was well coordinated and that had great talent surrounding it. And USC doesn't just have questions on their defensive roster. Outside of Jonah Monheim, who's projected to be their offensive center, they have questions with the offensive line depth and their receivers and quarterback, which should be elite, and I think they'll be elite. They're young, and they don't have a lot of collective starts with them either. Plus, you have two tough non-conference games, and don't laugh, but whether it's Rutgers, whether it's Minnesota, whether it's Nebraska, these teams who have been known as collective garbage for the previous few years, and deservingly so, what do they have? They have physical offensive lines. They have good running backs. What did USC suck at doing more than anything last year? They let Dylan Johnson run for nearly 300 yards, and they didn't do much to change the D line. So that's why I'm going with closer to 500 than not. But again, I have no read, so I could see them going 9-3 or 10-2. I don't think that's unrealistic at all.
I
Why do
agree.
you think they'll go 9-3?
You see, you made some really good points. They do have some concerns up front, but defensively on the D line, they put a lot of emphasis this offseason on strength and conditioning, gaining weight, and they even are punishing players for not meeting, the required weight gain threshold. They got to do like extra sprinters or they got to hop on the sled. So you're going to see a way bigger defensive line than what you saw last year because Alex Grinch had this weird philosophy that smaller and faster was better on defense. He wanted every play to be like the blitz, and ultimately that ended up being the complete opposite. They got blitzed on the ground. I think with Deanna Lynn having an NFL style background, a lot of the issues that USC had defensively are going to be fixed in year one because I don't necessarily think that it all was due to lack of talent. Why USC's defense struggled last year, they had missed tackles, blown coverage assignments. Just having Deanna Lynn is going to fix those issues. Now, is this defense going to be all world in year one? No, it won't. But I definitely expect it to be around the top 60 defense. That's definitely some improvement. Offensively, look, I'm not going to question the legitimacy of what USC is going to be offensively this year, because although they're going to have to adjust to a new style of play in the Big Ten doesn't see offenses like USC every single week. Big Ten football is more rooted in, we're going to impose our will on you on the ground, but we also have the ability to throw it if need be. But this was a conference at the same time last year where Iowa made it to the Big Ten championship game with their special teams and defense scoring more points than their damn offense. And this is just a conference that, to me, offensively, outside of Ohio State, they haven't seen an offensive attack as prevalent as what they're about to see with Lincoln Riley and company entering this thing. They don't know about Zachariah Branch. And I don't think there's too many cornerbacks outside of Will Johnson that are going to be able to handle the kind of speed and the kind of game that he brings to the table. Penn State
That's a fair
was
point.
the best team that Ohio State and Michigan both played last year, and they were able to suffocate them because Penn State, with the same issue that they have going into this year, they didn't have wide receivers that could separate. With USC, their whole entire wide receiver room this year, at least the guys they recruited, have been 4 stars or better. They got multiple guys that were top 100 recruits. I believe that USC is going to have success throwing the football, and they're going to have success scoring points. The question is, are we going to see the same style of game being played that we saw last year out of this school, which is all offense, zero defense?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the only real rebuttal that I have to that is that Penn State had an like nearly all-time great defense last year. USC, I'm 100% confident they won't have that this year, but it'll be hard for special teams to cover Zachariah Branch, to stop him from maybe getting a game-busting return. And USC also has good special teams all around with their punter and with their kicker Dennis Lynch. That is why I've said that I don't have a read, because I could see them winning many of the games on their schedule, but I just don't have a read, and that bothers me. By the way, who mentioned the sprints and the punishments for not gaining weight? Like where do you see that?
I read that up on something I saw from USC Trojans Wire, I believe that it was. Like they're really committed to getting bigger, man. Like at the start of the offseason, Lincoln Riley said that he's going to change things around. They're going to change how they practice. They're going to put more emphasis on defense, being physical. So he understands, and a lot of the other players have came out and talked about how much weight they've gained, and they already knew after that loss to Washington, changes needed to be made. They had it to get bigger. They had it to become a more physical team. And although Rome wasn't built overnight, you definitely are going to see a way better team in the trenches this year out of USC than what you saw last year.